Imagine this, you've just completed running a world eater and have recorded a replay of it to make it into a time lapse. You load up your newly created replay to start setting your keyframes and... what's taking so long? Well, maybe I'll just try jumping ahead about 10 minutes this time and see what happens. Oh no. This wasn't some hypothetical scenario, it was my reality. So I tried to diagnose the problem and wrote a small tool to fix the issue. It took a lot of trial and error, but I eventually succeeded. My time-lapse could finally be made. But this left me with a question. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a easy-to-use, publicly available open-source tool that could optimize replays, where knowledge of programming, ReplayMod's file format, and Minecraft's networking protocol isn't needed? Well, after months of work, I'm happy to introduce Replay Packet Cleaner, or RPC for short. This is a standalone tool written in Java for editing ReplayMod replay archives on a limited degree. It features a graphical user interface for easy selection of configuration options, and you can import one or multiple into replays to be edited at a time via the file browser or by dragging and dropping. The options currently available are as follows. We can remove block animations from the replay. This isn't stuff to do with animated textures that it's handled entirely on the game client, but stuff like chests and shulker boxes opening and closing, bells ringing, decorated pots shaking, and most importantly for performance, the smooth animation of pistons extending and retracting. If your replay has a lot of pistons firing within it, removing into this packet can dramatically improve performance at the cost of those smooth animations and occasionally causing ghost piston heads. Next, there is an option to remove all entities except players from the replay. This can greatly improve performance in cases where you have a lot of entities within your replay, and if you ever encounter that loading bar and when you open a replay where you go to set a keyframe and it has to load all the entity positions, yeah, checking this box basically yeets that bar from existence, so it's a great all-around performance improvement. If you don't need these entities at all, then easy one to check. Next, we have an option to remove most particle effects from the replay. And then we have an option to remove most sound effects. Since ReplayMod can't include these sound effects in the rendered output anyways, this is a pretty safe one to check. If we head over to the first tab, we have a set of options that don't affect performance at all, but in my mind are absolutely essential for producing survival time lapses that are pleasant for the viewer to watch. First, we have the ability to override the time of day. This is the equivalent of, say, using the game rule do daylight cycle false and then setting the time to a fixed value with /time set and then like the number in ticks. Next, we can override the weather, so we can override it to either be always rainy or always clear. Again, equivalent to using the game rule do weather cycle false and then setting your desired weather. Most of us are probably just going to set the weather to clear, but if you want to set it to rainy, you can, and you also get access to these sliders to set the rain level and the thunder level. From what I understand, these sliders affect how dark the sky appears, so feel free to experiment with them. Or not, and just set the weather to clear, because, let's be honest, that's what we're all going to be doing. When you are ready to export your replays, you can hit the export button and choose the directory where you want to save your replays. An important note about RPC, it will never overwrite your original replay files. In fact, it will never overwrite any of your replay files. If a file happens to have the same name as one it's exporting to, it will handle that and give it a unique file name. Additionally, everything that RPC exports will have RPC in parentheses appended to the file name. That way you can easily distinguish it from your original replay, and more importantly, you don't accidentally end up overwriting your original replay. It is at this point that I need to offer a major disclaimer. When using this tool, never delete your original replays. It is entirely possible that this tool could spit out garbage that doesn't work properly with ReplayMod or fails to work at all. Once you've selected the directory you want to export to, you can just hit save, And as you can see, this tab opens up the job queue, so you can see everything is being processed concurrently. And while that's happening, we can actually just go ahead and say, drop in another replay file over here, and say we want to use different settings. We want to set this to 4,000 ticks. We want to set it to rainy. We don't want to remove entities here. We can do that, hit export, choose a directory where this will go, and it will be added to the queue and start processing as soon as possible. Ensuring the UI is responsive and always open to user input was very important to me when developing this project. And there you have it. That's the full tour of the tool. But how well does it work? Does it actually improve rendering and timeline performance in ReplayMod? Well, I did some testing, and let's start with the first chart. This replay is about 26 hours in length, and here we're testing the timeline performance. How long does it take to go from the very beginning of the replay all the way to the end? And well, as you can see, the original replay did not finish this test. Only removing block animations brings this replay back into the realm of usability at 4 minutes 28 seconds. But if you remove everything, 32 seconds. How about timeline performance of one of those World Eater replays I talked about in the intro? And yeah, it's a really interesting chart. How about a replay that's more representative of your typical replay and that most people end up recording? This is one of the replays of me building my storage system. There's not a lot going on in it. There's not a lot of entities. There's not a lot of pistons firing or anything crazy like that. It's a 45-hour replay though, which is pretty darn long. Still, the original replay pulls in an impressive result. Sipping ahead 45 hours in only 1 minute? That's pretty nice. You know what's nicer? 7 seconds. Alright, so timeline performance has clear benefits, but how about rendering performance? Same replay here, and you can see the original takes almost an hour to finish rendering. This is at 4K with shaders, by the way, so it's a pretty realistic setting. Removing entities by far had the most dramatic effect here, cutting render times almost in half. If we circle back around to that first replay I showcased, we can see that yet again, render times are being cut in half versus the original replay. I think you can see now why I wanted to bring this tool into existence. Life is short, we're all gonna die someday, and no one wants to spend any more of their precious time than they absolutely have to setting keyframes and waiting for replays to finish rendering. Currently, at the time of publishing this video, this tool only supports replays recorded in Minecraft versions 1.21 to 1.21.8, with support for older Minecraft versions planned to be rolled out in future releases. I also have a bunch of ideas for future features I'd like to implement in the project, but okay, this is where I need to get into a disclaimer. I have a lot of ambitions for what I want a version 1.0 of this project to look like, but I can't guarantee that it will ever get there. Like my YouTube channel, this project is a hobby, and as such, it competes with my free time for my other hobbies, and like any hobby, it isn't necessarily immune to being dropped at some point. And I just want to be honest with you about that and not string you along and have you hold your breath for this certain feature that I'm totally going to implement one day and then it never comes. To temper your expectations a little further, I'm a self-taught programmer. I don't have a computer science degree and I write a grand total of 0 lines of code for my day job. Down in the description, you'll find a link to this project's GitHub page. If you're a developer looking to get involved, please note that I'm probably not going to be super responsive to pull requests during the alpha phase of this project. For everyone else, you're going to want to navigate over to the Releases tab and download the latest version of Replay Packet Cleaner in order to use it. Just make sure you have Java 21 or newer installed on your machine. Now, if only there was a place where you could stay up to date on new Replay Packet Cleaner updates and discuss the tool. Discuss. Discord? With the launch of this tool, I feel like there's a very good argument for me to open a Discord server, so we'll see how that goes. Invite link down in the description. Anyways everyone, that's going to be it for this video. If you found it helpful and could leave me a like, I'd greatly appreciate it. Now go make something awesome. Perhaps I'll even see some of you on the Discord. Catch y'all later. Bye.